We'll have to adopt sub. You know the process for that. No?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Meeting 5 of the Senate Standing Committee on Education will come to order. Clerk, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Here.
Senator Givens.
Here.
Senator Higdon. Senator Meredith.
Present.
Senator Neal. Senator Rawlings. Senator Reed.
Here.
Senator Thomas. Senator Williams.
Here.
Senator Wilson. Senator Wise. Vice Chair Tishner. Chair West.
Here. We have a quorum. We're duly constituted to conduct business. I'm going to go through the normal education rules before we start. Please silence your cell phones. No signs are allowed in the committee rooms. If you wish to speak in front of the committee, you do need to sign up at the sign-up sheet in the back corner by the door. And do any members have introductions? Senator Meredith first, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the 5th Senate District is well represented educationally speaking today. I have constituents here from the Cloverport Independent School System in the front row here. And if you see the green wave that's in our crowd, Meade County School District has several people that are here today. I will appreciate if you welcome them.
Nice welcome to all those people. Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As usual, I have a number of Fayette County teachers here today, and they represent 4 different schools, and I'm proud to acknowledge them. First, I have teachers from Crawford Middle School. I have teachers from Carter G. Woodson Academy. I have teachers from the Edith J. Hayes Middle School, and from Cardinal Valley Elementary. I'd like the committee to welcome them and make them feel welcome.
Senator Thomas always has quite the following. Welcome, Fayette County teachers. Senator Williams.
If they've been able to get in the room, I'd like to welcome the Carroll County Youth Leadership Group. They're here with Matt. There they are. Okay. Welcome from Carroll County. Thank you very much for attending and these new leaders from Northern Kentucky.
Welcome. Senator Tishner.
Yes, I have a guest with me today. This is Michael Schmelsley, and his parents are here from my district, and he actually is a 7th grader at the middle school that I attended not so long ago, Oldham County Middle School. So we're glad to have him here today to join us and see how things roll here in Frankfort.
All right. It's introduction day. We're going to keep rolling down the line. Senator Wise.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have with me today my 13-year-old daughter, McLean, who's a 7th grader at Taylor County Middle School, and it's an honor to have her here with me. And this afternoon, I'll be recognizing her also. She is the reigning State Junior Beta Club president for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Thank you.
Senator Rawlings.
We've got a group from Boone County, a group of teachers who are diligent and about caring about our kids, and so they're with us, and along with them is the teacher of the year, Kevin Daly.
Yeah. Senator Neal.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am fortunate to have with me today Jessica McFall, who is a member of the Kentucky Nurses Association. I'm delighted to have her here, and I'm delighted the fact that she's a nurse, and that's a story I could talk about all day, but I'll do it another time. Thank you. Please welcome.
I should have asked who did not have introductions, but I'll finish this off. I've got with me today Keaton Miller and Thomas Kennedy, my 2 interns for the day who are trying to keep me on time, if the committee would make them feel welcome as well. We will jump right into it with first bill on the agenda today, Senate Bill 3, an act relating to student athletes and declaring an emergency. Senator Wise knows the rules. Got to make sure your green light is on your microphone. and everyone has to state their name for the record and proceed. Nice win last night. Nice win last night. So, floor's yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Max Wise, State Senator, 16th Senate District, and I'll let my guests introduce themselves for the record.
Josh Hurd, Athletic Director at the University of Louisville.
Mitch Barnhart, Director of Athletics, University of Kentucky.
Members of the committee and the audience, we're not yet into March, but we know that March Madness is soon around the corner of the calendar. And I think we can all attest that it's always an exciting time when both of our flagship universities are playing at a high level of college athletics. And that's a testament also to both head men's basketball coaches right now at both institutions who've done a wonderful job so far this season. And I think they both are in the contention of possibly being named NCAA Coaches of the Year this year. I want to thank both of my guests, Mitch Barnhart from the University of Kentucky and Josh Hurd from the University of Louisville, being here today as we take a proactive stance and a testament to the work that we have done in this legislative body centered around name, image, and likeness, or more commonly referred to as NIL. In 2022, this legislative chamber passed Senate Bill 6, which established a framework for student athletes to benefit from their NIL. In this position, Kentucky is a leader in NIL reform, allowing our universities to attract top talent while protecting student athlete rights. However, we all know that the landscape of college athletics is constantly evolving. And there's many of us probably on this committee, and there's many people probably watching that are wishing we just went back to the old days. There's probably times in college athletics that both of these athletic directors may think, I wish we were back in the old days. Unfortunately, those days have now passed, and we are in a new era of college athletics, an era which is constantly evolving, and an era that we may not know if this bill passes and we exit out of here March 28th, what would happen in the interim session in college athletics. But it's a time for us to act, and it's a time for us to update, to make sure that the Commonwealth of Kentucky and our universities are not left behind when it comes to college athletics. The recent House versus NCAA lawsuit has introduced potential changes that could reshape student athlete compensation. And a proposed $2.576 billion federal settlement is expected to be finalized by April 7th of 2025, which may allow universities to directly compensate student athletes, something not previously covered in our Kentucky NIL framework. Without proactive legislative action, Kentucky's universities risk falling behind. What you have before you in Senate Bill 3 is our solution to stay ahead. It ensures that we remain prepared, we remain competitive, and we lead in this new era of college athletics. Senate Bill 3 does three primary objectives. I'll explain those real quickly, and I'll let my guests make any comments they wish to make. It aligns with national standards. Senate Bill 3 will update Kentucky's law to enable our universities to participate seamlessly in the emerging revenue sharing models. It expands on the earning of opportunities. It allows our universities to sublicense student athletes' NIL to third parties, opening new opportunities for athletes to capitalize on their talents, and the establishment of legal protections by providing clear guidelines to ensure fair compensation, protecting both the student athletes and the institutions. Most importantly also, this bill does include an emergency provision, meaning it will take effect immediately upon its passage, and this urgency will ensure that Kentucky's institutions remain competitive as the national landscapes shift. At its core, Senate Bill 3 is about empowering student athletes, maintaining the university's competitiveness, and reaffirming Kentucky's leadership in college athletics. And once again, it's been an honor to have both of these gentlemen here today. We had a press conference before we came into this committee, and I just want to say how rewarding and refreshing it is as a Kentuckian to see the leadership of both of these institutions, not just on the basketball court, on the football field, or in the swimming pool, but the men that they are and the leadership that they represent for their institutions. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to turn it over for any comments that my guests wish to make or entertain any questions from any of the members of the committee.
Do you all wish to speak at all?
Be glad to.
Feel free. The floor is yours.
First, thanks so much for the leadership here in Frankfurt to give us some help on this really critical issue. So, Chairman West, thank you so much for your leadership and and leader-wise, without this help, we would be in a little bit of a different situation as we go forward. A lot of things have happened in the world of college athletics, and Josh and I have had an opportunity to see it on the front lines, and what he has done at University of Louisville is amazing and wonderful, and he continues to be a leader in the ACC, and thankful for his leadership on these issues. It's a critical issue. On a lot of times we compete, but on this we're on the same team. We both need help as we continue to adjust to the landscape that's in front of us. And the 2022 bill was amazing. It was really, really helpful at a time we desperately needed it. But times have changed, and we need to be able to adjust and be fluid through the choppy waters that we're in right now. Legislation is necessary to give us the ability to legally to maneuver through the settlement that is in front of us. And why now? Because this gives our staffs the opportunity to prepare for the next 3 months as this thing becomes legal on July 1 of 2025. And so really important for us to be able to have this landscape. We have 2 transfer windows that are going to be coming in late March and April. Our staffs are going to have to work their way to navigate through that as well. And so a lot of pieces. We've got 675 student athletes at the University of Kentucky. And as this new settlement takes place, we'll still have, with roster changes and all of those things, well over 500 student athletes that we're representing and that are counting on us to give them the best opportunity they can to ensure that they have the ability to use their name and their image and their likeness legally, and that we have the ability to compensate them and create third-party arrangements through our relationships that are within the range of compensation that is outlined in the bill that is so super important to us right now. Finally, I think it just gives us flexibility as we go forward. We're not sure where the landscape is going. We do know that this may be one step. It might not be the final step. There may be things that come down the road as things and conversations happen in Washington, D.C., as things happen on our national landscape, and as a new entity of college athletics has been created. There may be things that we have to adjust to, but for now, this is the step that is most necessary for us to be able to continue to move forward with our athletic departments and for all of our young people.
Chairman West, Leader Wise, thank you. For everybody in this room, thank you for not only helping with, I know a number of you were involved in the 2022 legislation, but obviously listening to this legislation because it's an important one. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Mitch here. He's been very helpful to me throughout my career. And as he said, we're on the same side on this issue here. So as many of you know, college athletics landscape seems to change almost daily. So I appreciate this proactive approach so that institutions in the Commonwealth can be ahead of the curve when it comes to the NCAA versus House settlement, if approved. If approved, the House settlement will assist in creating a framework that provides additional benefits to student athletes, but also creates guardrails that are much needed in this current environment. The anticipated date for a decision on the House settlement is the first few weeks of April. SB 3 updates current Kentucky statute so that U of L, UK, and others can implement the presumed changes that will take place if the House settlement is approved. This legislation was introduced to ensure U of L, UK, and all of the collegiate athletic programs around the Commonwealth have the ability to best serve our student athletes. The legislation will allow our athletic departments to enter into agreements with our student athletes to directly compensate them for the use of their name, image, and likeness. The legislation will also allow our institutions and staff members to work alongside our student athletes to help them secure agreements from outside entities to once again benefit from their name, image, and likeness. SB 3 will require student athletes to report deals that exceed a value of $600. This will help with the establishment of a fair market value or range of compensation for deals to be approved or rejected through a national system and database. In theory, this will significantly reduce the quote-unquote pay-for-play environment that is currently taking place. As leaders of major athletic departments who participate in the ACC and the SEC, we have a responsibility to work together and work alongside our elected officials to ensure we're doing what's best for our institutions and our student athletes. We have a responsibility to work towards a framework that allows our student athletes to graduate from our great institutions, allows them the opportunities to benefit from their name, image, and likeness, all while trying to be as competitive as we can. There's no doubt that college athletics has changed drastically over the past few years, but we can ensure its continued popularity if we work together to do what's best for the majority as opposed to doing what's best for each of us individually. SB 3 helps align UK, U of L, and others with what is expected to be a set of national standards that will presumably be agreed to in the near future. Lastly, SB3 will ensure athletic departments around the state are not at a competitive disadvantage as our student athletes compete to bring championships home to the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thanks for the excellent presentation. Senator Wise used to sit in the chair as chairman up here, and I can assure you one of the first things you learn when you take over education chair is athletics is ultra important in the state of Kentucky and top notch. So first question is Senator Givens.
Chairman, thank you, and Leader Wise, thanks for your leadership on this, as you do on many other issues. But this is one that we've seen you really lead on. So thank you for that, gentlemen. Thanks for being here today. I'd love to have an idea of where we're going to be 5 years from now. Let's say we're post settlement. I see the chuckle. Let's say we're post settlement, and we're facing a lot of choppy waters, and we see them peripherally. You all see them up close. The waters have been so choppy for the last few years. I'm hoping the waters is going to settle a little as a result of the settlement and this piece of legislation. Preview for me what an ideal environment would look like 5 years from now.
I'll take a stab at it here. I think I'd start by saying this is an opportunity for Kentucky to be a leader in the space of trying to create some common ground across the country. Right, the House settlement is presumably going to do that, but can states go along with that settlement to create that framework and those guardrails so that we're all adhering to the same set of rules? And I think that's the biggest opportunity, but also concern that I have as you talk about the future of college athletics. How do we make sure that we're all playing with the same set of rules? Because piecemeal state legislation has allowed that not to happen over the last couple of years. So I think if we can work together like we've done here and try to spread that throughout the country, I think that'll give us an opportunity to say, hey, everybody's competing with the same set of rules, and we're doing it in the best interest of our student athletes. Yeah, this industry has evolved. It's evolved significantly, but every industry evolves. And so if we, like I said, if we can work together so that there's a framework where we're all cohesively working together for what's best in college athletics, that's where I'd like to see the future go, and that's what we're going to try to do at the University of Louisville.
Yeah, I think that Josh hit it on the head. The ability to have continuity in our laws or our rules are really, really important. Currently, we've got 50 states that are doing 50 different things. So to have help from a federal level, I'm hopeful that there will be some guidance from that. There is a committee hearing in early March up in Washington, D.C., in about a week or so. And that'll begin some conversations about how some of these issues play out. We're going to go through a new entity, a change in the way that the landscape is looked at the Division I level, the governance, the new rules that'll all come in place with this settlement. We're all going to have to agree to be a part of that membership. We're all going to have to agree not to immediately run to the courthouse steps every time something doesn't go our way. We're going to have to figure out a way to say, yeah, we've signed on to this, and we're all going to work together. And previously, you've got folks that have said, well, we're a little offended by what just happened, and they take off and they run and try and do their own thing. We can't do that. We've got as an enterprise, we've got to be better. And we got to not go to the lowest common denominator every time we are looking for a solution. So the workarounds and those kind of things, we've got to find a way to stay within the guidelines and the boundaries of the rules that we've been given. And that's hard for a lot of folks to sit here and say that they line that up, that competitive piece with this, and they say, well, there's certainly got to be an easier way. Sometimes the nobility or the honor is in the struggle, and we've got to find our way through the hard times. And so this is absolutely new landscape for all of us. And I will tell you, we've got some coaches and staff who really, really, really want to return to the ability to compete on the field and put diplomas in the hands of our kids. And that's the two pillars of what we've been about. We lose sight of that a lot. The two pillars of what we talk about all the time is rings on fingers and diplomas in hands. And we don't want to lose sight of that. So we're educators. We all got into this thing because we want to educate and teach young people. And the leadership lessons, the generational opportunities, the generational leadership, and the generational finance that we can create through college athletics is immense. if we use it the right way, and that's our goal.
Thank you both for that response. And in my mind, the way I characterize it is, in the absence of some uniformity, we're continuing a race to the bottom is where we're headed. And so I'm hopeful that other states will fall in line, that we can maintain some uniformity, because I'm afraid we're going to damage something and it may become irreparable. The mystique of college athletics is a precious thing. And we've got to be careful and treasure that and not lose that. So, Mr. Chairman, one other quick comment, if I could, or question.
Please proceed.
One of the definitions in the language, in the bill language in front of us, and Senator Wise, you characterized this beautifully, but this definition of institutional agreement now means a new to Kentucky written contract or agreement between a student athlete and an institution. And I'm hopeful that in that contractual arrangement, maybe we can get away from some of this portal hopping that continues all the time. Would that be something you could speak to? Are you comfortable speaking to that? Because I would love to see us get away from this constant movement. And I've heard stories of athletes receiving an NIL incentive to come to an institution, never stepping onto the field and leaving having pocketed $300,000 because they hopped back in the portal the next year. They got injured, they couldn't get on the field of play, and they left $300,000 richer. That doesn't support continuity at all. Your thoughts?
Well, I'll speak to the issue of this vacuum that we're in right now. That's why a couple of things are super important to us. The legislation that is getting ready, or the settlement that's getting ready to occur, does provide some boundaries and some guardrails as we try and move forward. So that is really, really important. The coaches, I think nationally, would all be in favor of tightening up the transfer portal windows, not because we don't want young people to have the ability to move. If there's something that's not right in their experience and they need to move, we understand that. That is the responsibility of making that experience great is on us as institutions and coaches and staff. But if it's something's not right, they should have the ability to be able to move around and get themselves in a position of success for them. But at the end of the day, this vacuum that we're in has created some really awkward moments. And so to be able to find a way to make the experience what we want it to be for student athletes is really, really important. And I think that this new entity, I'm hopeful, will give greater guardrails to all of that. And that is a part of the conversation for sure. The contracts that you're speaking of, there is conversation about those. Are those a national contract that we're doing nationally, or are those institutionally driven? And that is in conversation right now, and that has not been done. That is not settled yet at the national level. So we're working our way through all of that. Josh,
Mr. Thomas.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just completely agree. And I think, once again, so much of this is, it's the term, we're flying the airplane, or building the airplane as we're flying it. And, we had, for a large majority of years, probably 50 years, we had the NCAA, and this is how it was structured. And quite honestly, institutions and the NCAA had a large majority of the power. And then with the approval of name, image, and likeness, that pendulum swung over here. And student athletes have a lot of power now. And we want them to continue to have that, but how can we bring that pendulum back to the middle? And so that, hey, if there's something there where it's like, hey, this just isn't the right place for me, this isn't the right coach or the right institution, then I do have the ability to transfer. But getting away from essentially using the portal as a leverage to increase their value, that's not what this was intended for.
Sorry to cut you off. Senator Thomas.
Senator Givens asked the most important question that's on everybody's mind. And I want to go back to your point first, Senator West, as I asked my question. We are ultra competitive here in Kentucky and ultra excited. And I think it's great that come March, we're going to have both UK and U of L, back in the NCAA tournament, both in the men and women's tournaments. And that's just wonderful for our state and going to create a lot of excitement. My question is both for Director Barnhart, good to see you again, Mitch, and Director Hurt. It's clear in my mind that Congress is really weak in wanting to address this issue. I mean, this has been on the table now for a long time, and Congress has not seriously sought to address it. And it also appears that the NCAA is weak as well in trying to address this issue. As I read the news reports and stories, there has been talk of the Power Four conferences, SEC, ACC, Big Ten, Big 12, they're trying to get together and form create some uniformity or a consensus on how to deal with NIL going forward. Could you all address that and talk about any discussions you've had with your colleagues at Ohio State or at Kansas or at North Carolina regarding any kind of agreement you all can come to as a Power Four group to bring some order to this whole NIL situation, the portal that including the portal that Senator Givens mentioned.
Yeah. So on the national level, the A4 conferences that you mentioned have got leadership in each conference that are meeting on an overarching implementation group for this settlement. And then there's 4 working groups underneath that, one of governance, of a new governing model, of a rules group that's creating the new rule structure that we'll all operate on in this landscape that you're talking about. The third group is a clearinghouse subgroup that is talking about how we monitor this name, image, likeness landscape that we're in, and then a cap management group that is creating rules for the cap management of the revenue share. The misnomer in all of this is that this $20.5 million figure that is tossed around, everyone thinks that is a check that the University of Louisville and the University of Kentucky are getting that check, and we're going to be able to dole it out. Those are permissive legislation that allows us to take the $20.5 million if we can create it within our own structures and parcel that out within our structures. All of that will be governed under this new entity created through the A4, and the commissioners of the A4 and the legal counsel of the A4 are working together to create that in lockstep with some of the people in the NCAA. So there will be a new structure, and there will be new rules, and there will be new guidelines in all of this that are, and I would say we're doing 8 to 10 years worth of work in about a 6 to 8 month period of time. So it's a pipe that's got a lot of water flowing through it right now, and there's a lot going on. So a lot of folks working really hard at it, and with a deadline of April 7th is when the settlement is supposed to be at least heard, the hearing on April 7th, probably later on in that month when the final decision on whether it's approved or not. But we've got to be ready for July 1, and that's what this bill allows us to do, and be ready so that we're consistent with what we're legally allowed to do and what this new entity will allow us to do.
We're pushed for time. This will have to be the last question in this segment. I got one final comment as we close here, and so Director Hurd, you used the analogy of flying the airplane, building it while you're flying it. The analogy I was thinking was it was a minefield. You know, this is a minefield that you're having to deal with, and I guess the goal is to dig up all the mines, but before you do that, you need to mark the mines, and so. To me, this is a really good intermediate step. You have an excellent bill sponsor and champion for what you're doing, but I would suspect maybe you might be back in the future for further legislation. But really appreciate the presentation and the good piece of legislation. Having said that, do we have a motion on the bill? We have a motion. We have a second. Please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to vote aye and like to explain my vote.
Please proceed.
I am one of those that thinks NIL and the portal has absolutely destroyed college sports. You can't focus on a game because all they talk about is that the best player is about to leave to go to another school. And I've lost interest in college sport because of it. And it's difficult for me to vote yes for this, and I regret the vote that I made. But in saying that, I also know that Kentucky has to compete, and I know that there's millions and millions of dollars involved in this investment and return. So it's kind of a difficult situation to support something you don't agree with, but I can't let our state fall behind in this area. And I truly hope they get it leveled out someday and it all makes sense again. Vote aye, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Givens. Senator Higdon. Senator Meredith.
I'll explain my vote, Mr. Chair.
Please
if I may.
proceed.
Certainly share Senator Carroll's sentiments. I wish we could go back in the days where the athletes played for the name on the front of the uniform rather than the back. I know we have to do this. I offer my aye vote begrudgingly, but it concerns me we have to dedicate time to this when 98% of the university students are not scholarship athletes. And I wish we were focusing on reducing the cost of their tuition or improving the quality of their educational experience. But instead, we have to deal with this. But I know it's out of necessity, gentlemen. I commend you for the job you have done. But I have to say this, it saddens me that we have to devote time to this. But I vote aye.
Senator Neal. Senator Rawlings. Senator Reed. Senator Thomas. Senator Tishner. Senator Williams.
Aye.
Senator Wilson. Senator Wise. Chair West.
Aye. Senate Bill 3 passes unanimously with favorable expression. Thank you, gentlemen, for that excellent presentation. Look forward to seeing you in the future. Next up on the agenda, we have Senate Bill 6, an act relating to the Support Education Excellence in Kentucky program, otherwise known as SEEK. You know the deal, Senator Givens. Floor is yours.
Chairman West, members of the committee, thank you for the chance to present Senate Bill 6 for your consideration. As filed initially, and you have it before you, we have...
You have a committee sub on this. Would you prefer
We do.
that
If
be
I could
adopted or
preface,
wait for later?
let me preface that just a moment, if I could. We have in front of us a conversation we talk a lot about, and that's funding of K through 12 education. And this piece of legislation arises from some confusion about what K through 12 education costs the taxpayers of Kentucky. As you see from the initial filing, and as you'll see in the sub here in just a moment, we're moving into a definition of cost where we actually start to categorize the fringe benefit cost. And I want to preface the conversation by sharing with all of you something you likely know, but maybe our viewers don't know. We send a lot of general fund taxpayer monies down to school districts for the purpose of educating our young people, especially K through 12 districts. Our public schools do a great job at that, and I applaud all of our teachers on the front line, our administrators, our bus drivers. They shape the lives of these young people. I've often said, when my wife was a high school teacher, high school biology teacher, teachers do more in changing the lives of young people in one day than most of us will in our lifetime as policymakers, because they meet these young people on the front line of what life looks like for them. So I applaud all of our teachers. In sending these costs down, these funds down for funding that education, the districts then in turn send back to the state level the on-behalf payments. And those on-behalf payments typically are comprised of the insurance costs and the pension costs. The districts pick up a small portion of that, but they send the vast majority of that back to us. This language basically says, hey, we're going to count the entirety of what the taxpayers fund as education-related expenses in Kentucky. With that, Mr. Chairman, we do have a committee sub that clarifies definitionally what we're trying to achieve, and I would certainly move for adoption of PSS 2.
We have a motion on the committee sub to Senate Bill 6. Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor of the sub say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Sub is adopted on Senate Bill 6.
No substantial change in the committee sub. We're seeing now that the fringe benefit costs are considered as in that list of payments under Section 3, as those funds are going to be counted as part of the SEEK contribution. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would be glad to entertain any questions on the legislation.
Any questions from members? Senator Higdon.
Just want to make a comment on Senator Givens. There's talk about how much money, what is included in funding. And we talk about the full actuarial determined employer contribution to teachers' retirement. Probably a lot of folks don't understand the type of money that we're putting in every year to pay for the actuarial cost of the unfunded liability. I just wanted to make a comment on, in just a few short years, it will exceed $2 billion a year. And the projection out just a few years beyond that going to $2.6 billion. That's not a budget cycle. That's per year. And as most people remember, when we started funding, there was a lapse in funding in 2016. Was the first year that we started fully funding the actuarial required contribution, and that amount was $500 million a year. So it's grown from $500 million in 2016 to just a few short years from now, $2 billion. So it's, I think it would be good for folks to understand what that unfunded liability is, and I just think it's good that you have that in the bill. I think it's good for people to know what the costs associated are with that are. Thank you.
Senator Higdon, thank you for that comment. It is very good to know, for people to know that cost is, and that's a cost, that's a commitment the Commonwealth has made to those teachers. It's a commitment we fully intend to fulfill. And I will argue, as this piece of legislation clearly states, that is an education-related expense. That's what this piece of legislation does, and I appreciate your support and your wisdom. And thank you for your years of work in that public pension policy space, because it is a thankless space. and thank you for doing it.
Well, and in 2016, the legislators that were here then will know that we made a commitment to fully fund. The commitment we made in statute was struck down by the courts, but the commitment that the legislators made, and we're continue to make those payments, and that is a commitment to our teachers to make sure that that's paid.
Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Givens, this is really a major change. I mean, this is not something where we're just working around the edges. I mean, we're talking about significantly changing a formula that we've had in place here now for about 36 years. And it really wasn't all that long ago that we spent a summer back in 2022 looking at how we fund public education and raising the question then whether we should revise the SEEK formula. Commissioner Fletcher, who's in the audience today, was actually on that committee, not as commissioner at the time, when we discussed that. And it just seems to me a couple of things. One, if we want to change the SEEK formula, we should again do that through thorough and lengthy debate, over the interim, like we did in 2022, to decide what we want to do in that. This bill brings in teachers' retirement. It brings in health insurance, and we talked about that, but it leaves other things out. Like transportation, we talked about bringing in to the SEEK formula, like professional development, we talked about bringing to the SEEK formula, like textbooks, which we talked about back in 22, or bringing into the SEEK formula. And I just have a lot of reservations about doing something now that really doesn't speak to all the things we talked about in addressing the SEEK formula. And then to continue to call it SEEK, I think is misleading. Maybe if we're going to change the SEEK formula and add in all these other items, we should come up with a new term for it. I don't have that right at the top of my head today, but something talking about total pupil expenditures per education, a TPEE formula. So I would ask you to speak to that, because just doing this now really seems to be misleading, and I think this requires a lot more thorough debate if we're going to revise the SEEK formula.
Senator Thomas,
please proceed.
Senator Thomas, thank you for the question, and let me ease your reservations. You've offered and given me the chance to ease your reservations. Let me do that. This is not seismic change. And the reason that I say to you it is not seismic change is if you look very clearly on the bottom of page 3, fringe benefit costs are defined to mean expenditures from state sources made by the state on behalf of school districts. If this were seismic change, we would be sending the money down to the districts and telling the districts to fund the insurance and fund the teacher pension contributions. That would be seismic change. This is not seismic change. This is simply clarifying, and certainly all of us are liberated to vote the way we feel on the legislation. But this really boils down to a simple question in my mind is, do you consider teacher health care cost and teacher pension contributions to be necessary education-related expenses? Very simple question.
Senator Neal.
Senator, thank you, Mr. President. Senator Givens, would you concede that our system now, at least since 2008, in terms of education, is underfunded?
I would not concede that.
Okay. So I just want to make a comment, Mr. President. Chairman.
Please proceed.
My observation is that it is, and that we've been, in my opinion, derelict in the way that we've approached this. This is my review of it, and it's subject to opposition and further interpretation by others. But my point is that there seems to me to be clearly deficiencies in terms of how we and to what extent we've funded the education system in this state. And we merely have to look around the states around us and some of the other initiatives that are taking place in other states, that it seems to me that our focus really should be, how do we provide necessary resources, and actually more than just necessary resources, so that Kentucky has the financial commitment that takes in consideration the inflationary count, the inflationary factor as well, and that we don't pad it, it's my words, with pension funds, et cetera. I'm interested in what translates in the classroom, what translates where the rubber meets the road. And that's what worries me about what we do. So I just wanted to express that. I'm sure your intentions are pure, but I don't think this necessarily gets us where we need to go. It's almost like a hat trick for some. They can use these things to not deal with the very fundamental question, and that is, are we adequately funding our education system here in Kentucky? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, brief response, if I could. Thank you.
Proceed.
So, Leader Neal, and you and I often will engage in these conversations around education policy, and I'm glad to engage in this one with you because it reminds me of something that's vitally important that we've got to all keep in the forefront of our minds. For all the things that move the needle in the life of a student, we all agree that education does that. To impact a student educationally, I think we all agree as well that the most impactful thing in a student's educational experience is the quality of the teacher in the classroom. We can put great teachers in struggling environments, maybe not the best school building in the entire state, and they can still move students in educational gain in ways that are just amazing. And so I say that to say, for us to have the best talent in the classroom, we've got to acknowledge that pension costs and health care costs are an education-related expense, and that's what this legislation does.
Senator Williams, be the final question in this segment. Quickly, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with that. I think all things figure in. My concern is that even if you figure that in, the question is, are we adequately funding education? Are we paying our teachers enough, for instance? I could go right down the line, and I would suggest that we are not there. We're one of the greatest funding peaks that we've had for a while, and I know we have to be cautious on how we spend funds, but I would argue that we have not over a period of time, and we shouldn't beat ourselves in the chest thinking that we've reached that, because I don't think we've done that. And I look forward to continuing that discussion with you.
Mr. Chairman, at the expense of another liberty, could I respond again, please, briefly?
Please proceed.
Under your leadership, Mr. Chairman, we had an eye-opening conversation not so long ago about quality, what attracts quality into the classroom, and I came away from that with a different sense of what it took to bring the best and the brightest into these classrooms. Pay matters, but pay was not even on the list of things that were talked about in that groundbreaking conversation that OEA brought to the table about the research work they've done. The environment in that school building and the culture that those leaders have created for students to learn and teachers to teach, that work environment is what attracted talent to a district, to a building, and to a classroom. Creating space for teachers to do what they did, having rules, having regulations, having student behavior, all those things are what create and attract talent. And that was a groundbreaking conversation we had. So I appreciate your leadership on us having that discussion not so very long ago.
Absolutely. Senator Williams will be the final word in this segment.
So it's my understanding, looking at this bill, that we aren't changing any actual funding in this bill. What we're trying to do is just to accurately report the funding that we are providing. Is Senator Gibbons, is that correct?
That
This
is
isn't
correct.
changed?
That is correct.
So, do we have a motion on Senate Bill 6? We have a motion from Senator Tishner. We have a second from Senator Williams. Please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Aye.
Senator Givens. Senator Higdon. Senator Meredith. Senator Neal.
I'd like to explain my aye vote.
Please proceed.
Of course, Senator, that vote of aye is merely for the committee so we can get it to the floor so we can talk about it some more. I'm not fully convinced that we are focused exactly where we need to be focused. I made my previous remarks. I'd like to continue that discussion with you. I have a list of things. It's not just about teacher pay. It's about a number of things that we don't see now that need to be buttressed in the system, and I look forward to that conversation with the entire committee, but specifically with my good friend, Senator Givens. Thank you.
Senator Rawlings. Senator Reed. Senator Thomas.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to explain my no vote.
Please proceed.
You know, I really struggle with this bill, and I certainly understand the good and honorable intentions of Senator Givens. I mean, he's just absolutely great senator. But the SEEK formula that has been established over the last 35 years has just focused on what the per pupil expenditure is by the state. Okay? And, you know, that money is to go to, school resources, content provided to the student. It has not included teacher salaries or pensions or health insurance. And quite frankly, to say that should be included seems to me a little disingenuous. I just got to say that now, because we have a governor who's provided great leadership to this state over the last 5+ years, who's been an advocate from day one of having this legislature vote to pay teachers, you know, a very worthy salary, and compensate teachers through our budget. And this legislature, year after year after year, has refused to do that. And now we're saying, well, we want to bring in, you know, teachers' pensions. We want to bring in teachers' health insurance, and we don't fund teachers. We have just blatantly not funded teachers for the last 5 years. So that just seems disingenuous to me. I think the SEEK formula ought to remain the SEEK formula. If you want to change it, again, let's have a task force like we did 3 years ago. We had educators from all over the state, the future commissioner of education, on that task force, and do a deep dive into what are truly per pupil expenditures, or as I said, total pupil education expenditures, and then come up maybe with a new formula. But until we get there, I just have to vote no on this particular bill.
Senator Tishner. Senator Williams.
I'd like to explain my aye vote.
Please proceed.
I think I agree with actually on both sides, but I don't believe the SEEK formula accurately reflects today the amount of resources and funds we put into education. And it doesn't actually accurately reflect a per pupil expenditure that we're expending on the behalf of every pupil in the state. I was around when this first started, and there was a big discussion on whether teacher salaries, teacher pay increases ought to be in the SEEK formula or out. Teachers actually wanted it out back then, okay? So we need to adjust after 30 years of the SEEK formula and make sure that we accurately reflect what we are putting in per pupil for education. And this bill is a step in the way to accurately reflect that per pupil expenditure in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. So I vote aye.
Senator Wilson. Senator Wise. Chair West.
Aye. Senate Bill 6, as amended by committee substitute, passes with favorable expression. Thank you, Senator Givens. Excellent presentation. Up next, we're going to go a little bit out of order. Representative Truett, if you would step forward to House Bill 241, school district calendars and declaring an emergency. I'm going to warn you in advance. We're behind time. You got one bill behind you. The reason we're behind on time is the chairman is not in total control of the committee and the schedule. So if you could try to keep it to 5 minutes. I know this is a big subject. Try to keep it to 5 minutes. I'm going to try to do a hard stop at 11:05 for the bill that's after, just to give everybody a roadmap of where we're headed. So the floor is yours. State your name for the record and please proceed.
Representative Tim Truett, 89th House District. Chairman, thank you for allowing me to present today.
If you could hold off 1 second, I forgot to announce this. An incorrect version of the sub was sent out last night. A corrected version after that was sent out. The corrected version is what everyone has in their packets. So everyone should have the corrected version of the sub. Since there is a sub, do you want us to adopt a sub?
I've not seen the sub, so if you don't mind, please do so.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion on the sub.
There's a motion to accept the sub. There's a second. Do you have a question? Yes. Let's hold off on that for a moment. We have a motion on the sub. Once you give your presentation, then we'll come back and
okay, that sounds good.
ask
I
questions.
think I know what the sub is because I talked to Senator Givens. I've just not seen it yet this morning, and I apologize if it come to my email. I've just not had a chance to look at it. But basically, as you guys know, here in Kentucky, it's hard to help all areas of the state with legislation. Sometimes, it's we have areas of the state that are struggling in certain areas and other areas that are not. So in my area, in eastern Kentucky, we've been hit pretty hard this year with weather. We've been hit pretty hard with just natural disasters. Talked to a superintendent today that even though we've been enjoying some beautiful weather this week, today's their first day back, in over 2 weeks, because of the flooding. So what this bill does is it allows districts, and I want to explain traditional and variable calendar. I know some of you guys may know that. For those that don't, a district can choose to do a traditional calendar, which requires them 170 days, or they can go with the variable calendar, and then they're on minutes or hours, accumulated throughout the year. And by doing that, they can actually have less than 170 days, but there's still the same amount of instruction that's done. So in my bill, while it will allow a district to go to the variable calendar, which allows them to add time throughout their day so that they can make up some of this time that they have missed for various reasons. A lot of districts I've talked to are already up Like my district, for example, we're at June 9th already. That's barring no more extreme weather. So what this bill will do, it allows districts to add time to their day to get the kids in the seat. It will also allow 5 natural disaster days, severe weather days, in case there's something that happens between the time that this bill is signed into law and the end of the school year. And on June the 4th, if you're still in session and you've added time to your day to try to get your days in, the commissioner then can be asked to waive up to 5 calamity days so that our districts can be out of school. I'm speaking to you as an elementary principal. Testing in June is horrible. Testing in June is horrible for everyone. And, we want to make sure that all of our schools are being evaluated and it's accurate data that we're getting. So if we can get these tests completed before June, I promise it'll make things a lot better on everyone. So that's kind of what the bill does. On those 5 severe weather days, they have to be approved by the commissioner. So everybody, you hear a lot about where, I'm wanting 5 more NTI days. No, I don't like NTI days either. Okay, they're better than nothing, but I don't like NTI days either. I'd much rather my kids be in the seat. But what it allows to happen is if we have a district that experiences another flood, a hurricane, a tornado, in Kentucky we knew all those are possible. It allows them to ask the commissioner to allow them to have 5 additional severe weather days. And that's what the bill does. So I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Before we go into questions, I'm just going to basically announce to the committee what's in the sub, basically. So
Thank you.
If in your sub, it's page 2, item 8. And the only thing the sub does is it adds language. If a local Board of Education used 10 or fewer non-traditional instruction days during 24-25 and chooses not to take advantage of sections 3 and 5, the school district's average daily attendance shall be calculated by deducting 5 low attendance days in addition to the 5 days deducted. So
I think that's great.
I'm sure you would
I think that's great.
not oppose that committee sub. So we have, are you okay with us adopting the sub?
Yes.
Do we have a motion on the sub? Senator Givens, do we have a second? I'll second it. We have a second on the sub. All those in favor of the sub say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Sub is adopted. Now, do we have questions on the bill? Senator Tishner.
Thank you, Representative Truett. I wasn't opposed to the original draft of this House bill. I became opposed when the committee sub in the House got added in, and still stand opposed. And I think this, obviously we have the natural disasters in western or eastern Kentucky that we need to deal with, as we've dealt with in the past several years, that we've seen both western and eastern affected by natural disasters. But we've never had this type of absence in school, as obviously during COVID we did, and we're seeing the detrimental impact on education from that shutdown over health and safety reasons. And I'm not happy, honestly, with the language of Section 3 of this disaster relief student attendance days, which can be for health or safety reasons. I'm okay with disaster relief days all day long. But what we've seen this year, we have some districts who've maxed out their 10 days and now they're into snow days, yet they still take their teacher work days off. They still take President's Day off. They've still taken Martin Luther King Day off. They've taken days off where they could have utilized those for inclement weather days that they had to take that were factored in already to their calendar. Now we're going to grant them another 5 days. And I think students in the seat is vital. And we haven't really addressed what NTI has done. I think before we start inching the camel's nose under the tent on this issue of adding more days, we need to really reevaluate, is NTI working? Are we looking at the equitable access for students whose parents might have to work? Are we looking at an equal, true measure of instructional time? I hear stories of third graders who have 30 minutes of work is that really equating to 6 hours of instructional time? So I think we need to really address this issue before we start to broaden this. And I realize this is just for this year. But can you speak to any accountability measures that we have in place for tracking student performance on NTI days? And also, is there a percentage of student participation that's measured in order for an NTI day to be fully counted as an instructional day?
Senator Tishner, I agree with just about everything you said there. There's nothing that takes the place of students being in the seat. Okay, the original bill, that was my idea. The committee sub came apart because of the flooding that we experienced, and we had a lot of superintendents reached out to myself and to the commissioner about what are we going to do. Talked to Pikeville superintendent just this morning on the way up. Today's his first day back. We've got, out of our 170 districts, we've got 71 districts that's already used all 10 days. 71 districts. We've got another 50 that's used 8 or more. So what happens is, or around 50. So what happens is we've got a lot of districts that use them. We've got a lot of districts that have not used them. And it depends on your territory. It depends on your county. Obviously, if you're in a county like myself and you've got a lot of rural roads, it's hard. Now, on the actual NTI, I agree with you 100%. We need to probably be a little more stringent on the requirements of NTI. Okay? I've talked to the commissioner a couple of weeks ago about, looking in the future, maybe requiring that the NTI day has some sort of virtual impact, part of it. Like in my district, my teachers had much rather be at school as to do an NTI day because they're online from 7:30 to 3:30. They're answering questions. They're teaching lessons. They're recording. They're doing breakout rooms. They're working all day long. So I know in my area, my NTI day instruction still not as good as being there, but it's bad dang close. All right, it's bad dang close. So I do think that there's room for us to change what a typical NTI day is. I agree. I do not think an NTI day should be a packet for a middle schooler or a high schooler. I do not think that. And my district don't do that. But now, like, the only time we do packets in my school is our kindergartners who are still learning to write their name and learning their letters and things like that. Now, they still have their Chromebooks, but packets, I agree. So I would be 100% in the future and maybe looking at it next year of coming up with some requirements on these NTI days. In order to use them, they have to be requirements. Now, I don't know on the actual participation, that would have to be probably a KDE question or maybe someone at the district level. I don't know what that is. I just know we try to get every kid participating, and we have really good participation on our NTI days.
Senator Higdon, you'll have to be the last question in this segment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I fully understand the disaster in Eastern Kentucky and the need for 5 extra days. I have no problem with that. But some other school districts, if there's a time where they can make up those days other than us granting days where those kids miss instruction, everybody wants to get paid, and I understand that, but we lose that instruction time. Are we going to give schools days and they still take spring break? It looks like that would be a requirement to make up some of these days. That just looking at it from where I sit. It's important that those kids, like you said, be in the classroom.
Well, I agree. And the way the calendar works, the calendar is set before the school year. Obviously, a district would have the ability to change their calendar a little bit. Senator Tishner talked about eliminating some of those days. Some of those days she mentioned, it would be, I think it would be a bad mistake of eliminating some of those days. But you could shorten spring break. Talked to Pike County superintendent this morning also. He's took away all of his spring break. He's already added additional 30 minutes to his school day, and he's going to be June 9th getting out at the earliest, he said. And that's already getting rid of everything else. And the way the calendar, each district has a calendar committee, which is made up of community members, school personnel, bus drivers. They decide as a group, a collective group, on how do we want to take a spring break? Do we want to take a fall break? Now, I'm telling you, I love my fall break.
I like spring break too. It's nice to get a break. You go from January to testing without a break, or very few breaks. A spring break is very helpful for teachers, students, parents. It allows them to spend some time, go on trips. It's a good thing. But once again, I agree. You have to look at your calendar. And I want to bet you that no district will use these 5 days unless it's just an absolute necessity. Every superintendent, every principal I've ever talked to, they want their kids in the seat. They want their kids to be successful. They want their kids to be able to read and write and do math. So I think that, once again, the emergency days, it's just a have-to case. I don't know. I hope there's no more flooding. I hope there's no more severe ice storms or tornadoes. But there could be. And that's all it is. Right now, currently, the commissioner does not have the ability to grant anybody any type of day like that or any type of waiver. So this bill is just for 1 year and this year only. And then we'll look. I'd love to work with you guys in the future of creating something that's good for every year.
Thank you so much. That'll have to be the final word on House Bill 241. I'll make a motion on House Bill 241. Do we have a second? Second from Senator Neal. Please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Aye.
Senator Givens. Aye. Senator Higdon.
Explain my aye vote,
Please
please.
proceed.
Representative Truett, thank you, and I firmly believe in the 5 extra days for those who are missed school due to flooding. Like I said, I do firmly believe that kids need to be in the classroom as much as possible. Thank you.
Senator Meredith.
Explain my aye vote briefly, Mr. Chair.
Please proceed.
I do vote aye, but if we're not for a 1 year period, I would not. This does need work, and you've already acknowledged that, but we need more structure to this so we don't have to come back every year and make exception one way or another. So I look forward to working with you on that.
Senator Neal.
I'll explain my aye vote.
Please proceed.
I think this is a common sense approach to it. I appreciate you bringing it. It's not designed to cure all with NTI days, and we do need to revisit that, but I think this is right on time.
Senator Rawlings.
Explain my aye vote.
Please proceed.
So initially, I didn't like the look of the bill, but it's for the 1 year, and I definitely respect Representative Truett and his judgment. My negative is what requirements are there to ensure that NTI is done well, but it's just for this year, so I agree with the others and vote aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye, with a ditto on the last 2 senators, and for the sake of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Thomas.
Should I briefly explain my aye vote?
Please proceed.
I think Senator Neal's absolutely right. This is just a common sense measure. I've heard some talk, though, about taking spring break, and I'm going to tell you, you want to see an irate community across the state. Once the calendar is out in August, you've got parents all over the state looking at spring break and saying, okay, I'm going to take time off of work and start spending money, putting down deposits so that they can go on spring break with their children. You cancel that 30 days out, 6 weeks out, that school board meeting will be flooded. The next school board meeting with parents angry about doing that. You cannot touch spring break. That's sacred.
Senator Tishner.
Briefly explain my no vote. I'm
Please-
going to be
please
sorry.
proceed.
I know we're on time crunch. I'm going to be a no on this one as the lone wolf apparently in the committee. I think we need to look at NTI days. I've seen too many districts take advantage of this. They jumped on those snow days and took away one of the great funds of growing up in public schools and getting a snow day, as opposed to even taking a 2-hour delay. None in my districts had delays. We were all going on time or not at all, and they chose not at all way too often. So I'm going to be a no on this. Thanks.
Senator Williams.
I'd like to explain my no vote.
Please proceed.
Senator doesn't feel alone. Actually, I agree with this bill, but I think there is too much emphasis on seat time instead of performance. I think we need to look at our whole basis of education and not base it upon time you got in the seat, but in performance. Have you achieved the goals? And have been hung up on Carnegie units. We've been hung up in credit hours, and it's performance that I'm more interested in rather than seat time. And so, but I'm going to vote no, because I really think we need to look at this whole thing from is seat time being effective, or is it performance that we ought to be measuring for the end of the school year?
Senator Wilson. Senator Wise.
Explain my vote.
Please proceed.
I'm going to vote aye to get the bill out of committee. Appreciate your leadership, Representative Truett. I also want to thank all the superintendents that are striving every day to be in the building, to have their students there. I respect those recently with the President's Day. I think it was mentioned by Senator Tishner that used that also as a makeup day. I understand the natural disasters and the situation that we're facing. I do hope we really take a deep dive into the future of NTI. Understand the need that was when it was created, but I do think that we've gotten off the path of that being the best educational measure that we're having to use today. So look forward to working with you and a collaboration of others as we go forward. Thank you.
Chair West.
Aye. House Bill 241 passes with favorable expression. Thank you, Representative Truett, for excellent bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, committee members.
Up next on the agenda, we have Senate Bill 268, an act relating to virtual education. I'll be presenting with Senator Reed, and I believe we have a representative from Cloverport here today. Co-Chair Tishner is going to take over at this point. She has a tough task. Her task is to keep us between 5 and 7 minutes. The mic is yours.
All right. Let's see if I can do this. Senator Reed, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself and your guests introduce yourself. And Senate Chairman West will be down there in a minute and can do the same.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Aaron Reed from District 7.
Keith Haynes, Superintendent of Cloverport Independent.
Sally Johnson, Principal of KYVA.
Senator West, District 27.
We do have a committee sub. Unless you want to discuss that briefly, we'll entertain a motion.
My vote is we adopt the sub.
I agree.
Is that a motion, Chairman West?
I'll make a motion we adopt the sub.
All right. With the sub adopted, go ahead. Oh, voice vote. We got to take a voice vote on that. Everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, it is officially adopted. Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Excuse me. Members of the committee, 2 weeks ago, we heard emotional testimony from Kentucky parents terrified that the governor's Department of Education was about to shut down their children's school without real notice, without consideration of the impact, and without a clear plan for what would happen next. These families weren't asking for special treatment. They were simply asking to keep their school open, a school their kids rely on for their education. That's not right. Senate Bill 268 ensures that students aren't left behind by allowing full-time virtual programs to continue operating with the structure and stability families deserve. It makes common sense updates to virtual learning laws, ensuring they reflect how these programs actually work. It also includes clear guardrails to ensure virtual programs are accountable and they're high quality. This bill does not create new programs. It simply protects the students already enrolled from having their education pulled out from underneath them because of bureaucratic decisions made with no regard for their future. Parents and students need certainty, not last-minute shutdowns. Senate Bill 268 ensures these programs remain open while putting in place reasonable oversight to keep them strong. I urge this committee to stand with these families and support Senate Bill 268. Thank you.
I would like to thank Senator Reed and Senator West for taking up this cause. It is much appreciated. I had the opportunity to speak to you all 2 weeks ago, so I will not beat a dead horse and tell you the same thing that I have already told you. We are appreciative very much of the opportunity to protect our school, and even if for a limited amount of time, to prove that this is a worthwhile option that 2,800, and I emphasize that 2,800 students and their families have chosen to take part in, and we believe is very much a worthwhile program to continue on into the future.
I have a couple quick comments, Madam Chair. Finish up. Cloverport has its own set of challenges, and they know that. This is a brand new program in Kentucky. There are virtual programs, but there's no that open enrollment legislation, other piece of legislation kind of opened this door, and no other program is as big as Cloverport. So there's been this, a lot of things have happened very quickly. So I think they'll be the first to admit, there's some growing pains with it. We also recognize the issues that KDE may have with Cloverport, and we understand they have really good reasoning and for wanting to do that. Although Cloverport is not a pilot, because they took this initial step, it's kind of operated like a pilot. And the mood of many of the senators, I believe, is that we would like to see what happens. Once their work continues, can this continue? Can this be productive? Although we didn't set up a pilot, it is experimental. And one thing that they do at Cloverport, and some of the problems they have been in the elementary levels, the elementary students. And so those elementary age students haven't performed immediately. But part of that is many of the elementary students coming in are starting out at a low proficiency level when they arrive. And so we feel they do need a little time to react. To me, the key portion of this bill, Senator Reed worked with Cloverport and others, but a key component of this bill, this was language brought to us by Cloverport, and it's page 13 where the date says June 30th, 2028. And Cloverport has said if everything's, we have a drop dead date, we have a sunset date. If things aren't going well by this date, you can shut us down. And so there's a built-in sunset provision within this bill. Another key component of that is we'll be back here in 10 months. So we can monitor the situation. If things aren't going as they should, we can haul Cloverport in here again in that next session. So just wanted to add a little extra to the conversation and urge passage of this bill.
Thank you for your testimony. I think this was a really interesting conversation that we had a few weeks ago, and I appreciate Cloverport recognizing that there are issues, and I spoke with the commissioner about those issues, and they're very valid as well. And so I do like that provision that we're going to push this through 28 and see how we are and hopefully make some adjustments so that we can deal with those issues. We have Senator Neal who has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is directed to the Cloverport representative. Sorry I didn't get your name. I apologize for that. I just have one really functional question. I have many questions, but we don't have so much time. What I want to know is I guess it's two questions in one, but has and will Cloverport comply with Kentucky Department of Education requirements? That's two things, has and will.
Sure. We have worked very hard. All of the issues that Commissioner Fletcher brought to our attention, we have worked very hard to come into compliance with, and I believe we're there. And
you were
absolutely
not in compliance initially. Is that what that?
There were issues that they brought regarding student-teacher ratios, and yes, that we were not technically compliant in at the time.
So will you be in compliance? Is that what the intent is here?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
And our final question, briefly, Senator Meredith.
No question, Madam Chair. Just want to thank the folks from Cloverport for being proactive in this situation. And Make no doubt about it. This is a different form of education, different type, but there's no doubt that the passion and love they have for their students that they take care of, and you'll be commended for that. But again, I want to thank you for the language you presented. I think this is very conservative approach to this. We'll take a look at it, address any issues we need to, but I just want to express my appreciation for you being so responsive to this. Thank you.
One final short question, Senator Williams.
Yes, you had 2,000 people on the waiting list when you testified before, I believe. Will this allow you to incorporate those, or are you limited to the 2% that I see in here growth?
We would be able, I believe. I'm sorry. Do you want to speak, Senator?
Yeah, I think I might be in a better position to answer that question. Just for clarification, the 2% in the bill is for students coming the other way. So it's the 2% is to protect all the other districts in the state, and so if I'm from Bourbon County, if you're in Bourbon County, if you're in Mercer County or whatever, Cloverport cannot pull in more than 2% of your students from your school. So that protects all the other schools in the state. Right now, within this bill, there is no cap. But this is going up. If this passes this chamber and goes over the House, they could put a cap in over there if they chose to.
Thank you.
All right, do I have a motion on the bill?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, please call the roll.
Senator Carroll.
Aye.
Senator Givens. Senator Higdon. Senator Meredith.
Aye.
Senator Neal.
I want to explain my aye vote. It's important for the KDE is there for a reason. The requirements that they put forth are there for a reason. I think we all agree that they got to be complied with. And when we start talking about outcomes, we're talking about individual children that are subject to adult decisions. And I think it's very important, but we've got a commitment here going forward. What's done is done to comply. And that encourages me somewhat, and I'm going to say, as I've indicated, aye with respect to that. But I think we got to be very careful, because when someone comes into a situation, particularly contractually, the burden really is on that individual to perform and to meet those requirements, to seek out what is required and do all those things to make that happen. So that's what gives me pause. But I'm going to vote aye today.
Senator Rawlings.
May I explain my aye vote?
Briefly, please.
It was so impressive to see the Cloverport parents and the kids here, and I think they need to be given a valid chance, a good long look before a final decision's made. So the parents were so overwhelmingly in support of the schools. That says a lot. So my vote's an aye.
Senator Reed. Aye. Senator Thomas. Aye. Senator Tishner.
Aye.
Senator Williams.
I'd like to explain my aye vote briefly.
Briefly.
Yes. I'm in technology. Technology is here. We're spreading broadband throughout the state for billions of dollars. We ought to be using it for instruction, not just for watching entertainment or Fox News or CNN. And this is a great use of our broadband investment, virtual education.
Senator Wilson. Senator Wise. Chair West.
Aye.
What are the numbers? All right, Senate Bill 268 passes with 11 yeas, no nays. And I apologize, I didn't keep it to the time constraints. I did a terrible job today. Thank you for your presentation, and it should move to pass on the floor. Do I have a motion for adjournment? So moved. All right, we are adjourned.